Okay, good morning everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. Our topic for today's webinar is edge security and software-defined networking. This is very relevant given the current economic climate and the ongoing global pandemic, and I'm sure many of you are dealing with a wide variety of new and challenging situations. Before we get moving any further, for those of you on our webinar this morning, can I see just a few messages come through, if you can, just to let us know that you can hear the audio coming through okay? Yes, I can see that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So today we're very lucky to have Carlos Gomez Gallego supporting us in today's webinar. So Carlos has over 20 years experience in the wireless, software and security industry, and currently serves as the APJ region Chief Technology Officer for HP Aruba. And coincidentally, Carlos was the co-founder and CEO of AmigoPod, a leading provider of enterprise guest access software. And since then, as we all know and love the technology today, as Aruba ClearPass Policy Manager. So before we move into allowing Carlos to take us through his webinar session today, I'll just go through a few quick housekeeping items. We have the chat tab. It'll be open for questions. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please do put through a note on the chat signal, and we'll get straight through to resolving that for you. We've got here that there'll be a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation. However, we've got a slight modification to today's webinar. We have a giveaway of an Aruba Enterprise Access Point 515 with a 12-month subscription to Aruba Central Device Management. As a consequence of that, and to keep today's session interactive, what we'd like to do and what we will be doing is at the end of the webinar today, we'll be regrouping, Carlos and myself, and discussing engagement and questions. So the winner of today's webinar will go to a combination of the engagement level and the questions. So what Carlos would like and what I'd appreciate is, as we're going through today's session, please throw questions in as they go through, and we'll do our best to attend to them and keep the webinar. I know it's a little bit challenging, but try to keep it as interactive as we can. Okay, and that's pretty much it for me. And what I'd like to do is I'll just introduce and hand over to Carlos. So if you're there, Carlos, all yours.
How are you doing, everybody? Can you see my slides okay and hear me?
I've got your slides perfectly there, Carlos. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thanks everybody, and welcome to the webinar. As mentioned, I'm the CTO here for Aruba Networks in the APJ region, and I'm very glad to be living back in Brisbane after 8.5 years over in California at our headquarters in a variety of different roles. So what I've been asked to present to, or what I'd like to present to you guys today is around edge security and SDN, and try to give you guys a few perspectives on what we're seeing around the world, what we're seeing from different customers in different verticals. And as mentioned, if you've got a question that pops up as I'm talking, send it through to the chat, and it may either get answered in the course of the webinar, or at the end we've left some time for Q&A where we can dive a bit deeper into specific questions. So I thought I'd start by actually asking the question, where is the edge, right? We talk a lot about edge security and the intelligent edge, but what are we talking about when we're talking about the edge, right? So, I guess, if we rewind back to January or February, the edge was certainly, in our workplaces, in retail environments, when we go and see sporting games, going to doctors or hospitals. It really is, the intersection of where the digital world and the physical world meet, right? It's we define that edge as where us as users, or even machines or IoT things, interact with the physical, combine the physical world and the digital world to provide us, insights, to provide us access to applications, to, provide us all of the great things that we do. At the end of the day, we don't build networks for the sake of having a network. We build networks so that we can use applications, right? Whether they're applications for work, whether they're applications for play and entertainment. Ultimately, we build networks so that we can, use applications. And so, whilst the edge, is, in a lot of these workplaces and the areas where I've described, over the past few months, unsurprisingly, there's been a new set of edges to deal with, namely the home. And so, if you are very, very wealthy and very posh, you can buy one of these pods and stick it in your backyard and turn it into a bit of a home office. But certainly from what we're hearing from clients, this is more their current edge at the moment in terms of trying to deal with working from home and kids and all of those sorts of things. So, that, and look, people have worked from home before, but certainly more on a exception basis for the most part versus, versus permanently. And there are certainly, some job functions that you just can't do over Zoom or over Teams. But, this is definitely a bit of a new norm and a new reality. And, our job as technologists is to, ensure that we're providing as the same user experience or as close to that user experience, the same level of security, the same level of performance, wherever that edge may be. At least for the time being, that edge for a lot of us is in our homes. I'm coming to you live from my bedroom today due to unforeseen circumstances in other parts of the house. So it doesn't quite look like this slide, but certainly it's different to to what we're all used to. And just to give you guys a bit of a example of something that's very topical and something where that interaction or that intersection, of the physical and the digital world, comes into play. Over the past few months, myself and some team members have been working on building out, contact tracing and space utilization solutions, right? Which is, obviously, again, as I mentioned, very, very relevant today. And, Aruba access points with not only their Wi-Fi capabilities, but their BLE and their Zigbee capabilities allow us to, leverage, asset tracking technology that we've previously used, to track high value assets, whether it be art pieces or machines or wheelchairs in a hospital or whatever it might be. And we've been able to adapt that so that we can, do contact tracing in factories and in hospitals and in other areas. So talking about indoor, enterprise contact tracing, not sort of government, nationwide. And so, you can see, because of this technology, how we can map, what's happening in the physical world and provide insights to, the appropriate HR staff or whoever it might be, so that if somebody has, had an infection or is not feeling well, we can actually go back and have a look at, okay, well, who are all of these people that, that the person came into proximity with? Again, that sort of melding of the physical and the digital world. And, taking it to, the next step is like, okay, well, how can I measure and monitor space utilization within, my facility, whether it be for, real estate planning, or whether it be to sort of say, hey, there's a lot of people that seem to be gathering in that bottom right-hand corner of the office. So, let's sort of redistribute some staff as part of our, return to office policies, whereby we say, hey, don't everybody sort of congregate in this particular location. So again, this is something that's obviously very, very relevant today, but just wanted to give that example of of that edge and that
Carlos,
yeah.
Just a quick question, mate. If you've made a recent investment in Aruba technology, how much change is needed to be able to take advantage of some of these new innovations you're working on?
Yeah, sure. No, that's a great question. So we could do an entire seminar on that alone, to be honest, in terms of the contact tracing and space utilization. So Aruba's brought two solutions to market. One is based purely on Wi-Fi, and so any Aruba customer that has Aruba Wi-Fi and Aruba Central is able to take advantage of it. And actually, even if you have Airwave, there's path forward that you can leverage, and that's built in and free for any customer that has Aruba APs and Aruba Airwave or Aruba Central. Now, Wi-Fi based proximity and contact tracing doesn't give you necessarily the same level of accuracy and real-time nature as a BLE based approach. And so the second solution that we brought to market, and the one that I'm sort of showing here, is based on our Meridian product for mobile engagement and asset tracking, and we sort of just repurposed it for for these kinds of use cases. So for this solution, you need Aruba APs that are the 300 or 500 series that have got the built-in BLE radio, and you would need to purchase the asset tags and the Meridian mapping and asset tracking. So there is an additional cost on that component. You can certainly leverage your APs, and that's why we put in these additional radios, because when we put BLE radios into these access points, sort of 3-4 years ago, we certainly didn't envisage that they would be used for this kind of a use case. But that's one of the things that we try and do, build in something at a hardware level that then leveraging software we can sort of leverage for new and existing use case. And we've actually just put up a new web page on arubanetworks.com. If you browse to the solutions section and contact tracing, you can find out all about it.
Thanks, Carlos. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problems. And look, certainly if people are particularly interested in this, and the reason I put it as one of my first slides is because I knew it was a sort of a hot topic. Feel free to reach out, afterwards to the team, and we can follow up and give you guys a bit more information if you're interested. So again, that intelligent edge or the edge is we see it as where where the physical and the digital world intersect in order to provide us these great experiences or these new applications that we can leverage. So the part of the title as well is around software defined, and if you sort of been following the industry over the last decade, I guess, or maybe slightly less, SD networking, the software defined networking, the kind of foundation, and has continued to sort of grow in terms of we have software defined WAN, we have software defined branches, we've got software defined perimeter, which is all around the sort of zero trust model and the Google Beyond Corp style architecture. And ultimately where we are today, I wasn't sure whether I was going to say SD Home or SD Office, but I ended up going with SD Office, given that could be in your home as well as it could be in your office, and really that's sort of where we are today with that hybrid workplace where there's some stuff going on at the office, there's some stuff going on in your home, and in some cases maybe it's in a third party location that you're able to get to. So realistically, we're kind of looking at software defined everything. And when SDN I guess first hit the market, I think there was an over marketing of the concept, and it was a bit more buzzwordy than actual of real value. But I think today, we've moved on from is SDN just about OpenFlow or a particular protocol, or is it really just in some ways it's like a mindset and it's an approach to actually building and designing network solutions which are software defined, but I actually think that a more appropriate term is cloud native. And what cloud native means is cloud native doesn't mean that something is exclusively in the cloud. What it means is that it's being designed with the cloud style principles of building highly scalable, highly resilient, and highly effective software solutions that are, no longer one big monolithic piece of code, but they're broken up with microservices and all of these sorts of things. And so how do we take that cloud native methodology and build it into a switch, for example, right? That switch doesn't live in the cloud. That switch lives in your wiring closet, but that doesn't mean that switch can't adopt these cloud native design principles and philosophies. And so again, when we talk about software defined, think, I look at it a bit more as, in terms of moving forward, as solutions that are, built cloud native. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, all of these things have software in them, right? And firmware, they've always had software in them, and the software is what controls the various features and turns things on and off and the like. So yeah, like I said, I like to refer to it a little bit more as cloud native. And so if we think about, what that sort of means, and again, that doesn't mean that every single thing has to go into the cloud. What we're seeing around the world is that whilst, the majority of our customers, with a few exceptions in defense and other sort of other areas, are certainly on a journey to the cloud, right? And some people are further on, and some people are, are still sort of a little bit behind in terms of, leveraging SaaS applications and ensuring that employees can, or students or patients or whatever can access these things. But what we're actually seeing is that it's not just a one-way journey to cloud and everything's there. What we're actually seeing is that there is still a need for having, applications and services, on premise that work in conjunction with, a cloud, with cloud applications, be them sort of private applications or public applications. And so really we need to try and, find a way where we can provide solutions that are sort of natively edge to cloud, and they allow us to do processing on-prem, they allow us to access applications on-prem, they allow us to access applications that are in the cloud. We are able to access this whether we are in the office, whether we are in our home office, or whether we are, sort of on the move. And so that's what, what I'd like to sort of base the presentation on today around, how do we get there, right? How do we move to this sort of a, more flexible, more dynamic, and in my opinion, a more secure approach to actually, delivering the services that all of our customers and all of your, employees and patients and students and whatever it might be are needing. So, cloud native.
Just a quick one on that one. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
Just a quick one there. So I'm not sure how to phrase the question correctly, so I'll run it ad hoc. Is it fair then to assume, because a lot of the supposed SD, we'll just generically call it SD WAN, SD branch, SD what have you, seem to be, moving a one size fits all, can be quite expensive, etc., etc. From what I'm seeing there is it doesn't have to be one size fits all, and it doesn't have to be super expensive.
Well, yeah. So I'd probably frame it this way: that you don't just go from one sort of architectural approach to another overnight, right? It's generally going to be a phased approach, and in terms of the cost, cost analysis, there are, depending on which of these components may be more critical for you today. It depends a little bit also on existing refresh cycles and investments that have been made. But one of the other things, I guess, that we're seeing a lot in the market, and again, not just in Australia, but globally, is, and certainly a little bit more accelerated, I guess, today, is the move to a network as a service style approach. Maybe not for everything, but certainly we are seeing customers transition a lot to OpEx models, which gives them more flexibility, year on year. And in some cases, look, I've had some very, very large company, CIOs, CTOs, CEOs say to me, Carlos, we don't want to manage the network anymore. We're not in the business of managing networks and ACLs and VLANs and all of these things. We're in the business of looking after, patients, or making sure that kids get good education, or whatever that might be. And so whilst there may be input into how that network is run, customers are really wanting to repurpose their employees to work on solving, important business problems and delivering applications to the business, versus worrying about, an ACL that they may have fat-fingered, or trying to, keep a track of MAC addresses of IoT devices in some spreadsheet or whatever. And, from the Aruba perspective as well, we do offer a whole series of financing services and said network as a service and the like. So, there's a lot to unpack there in some senses, but I guess the headline is it's not an all or nothing, but it is a journey and a transition that if you're not on the way there, you should certainly think about starting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more from what I've heard in the marketplace and customers of ours. They're using some of them moving towards DevOps style teams. Others are being empowered to, by the non-IT business decision makers are being asked to reinvent the IT function to be more aligned with the business outcomes and less aligned with ICT centric infrastructure and systems. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I'm fortunate enough to be on Aruba's or one of the committee members of Aruba's technical customer advisory council, where some of our top customers from around the world, we meet once a year and talk about these things. And a very large company, which I'm sure everybody on the call knows, flat out said to us, we are hiring developers and we're teaching them networking. And that's our go forward model. Now, I think that's a little bit extreme, but just to give the perspective of, you mentioned about that sort of DevOps model, and that's real. And as I said, these are, this is not just sort of small companies. This is companies of all sizes looking to do that. So yeah, I thought that was a very interesting insight. That was in September last year. They mentioned that.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no drama. So okay, so let's unpack that a little bit then in terms of what does this mean, or how do I go on this journey? And from an Aruba perspective, this cloud native architecture and this sort of move to a hybrid workplace, we've kind of broken it down into 3 tiers, and this is in line with what you read from the Gartners of the world and the other analysts out there. But we've tried to sort of break it down into essentially 3 steps: connect, protect, analyze, and act. And if we look at that bottom layer there from a connectivity perspective, it's looking at having that sort of unified infrastructure that is able to provide that connectivity layer. Now, to your point earlier, to the discussion we had earlier, maybe at this point your main focus is on getting wireless into this model. Your wired network and your SD-WAN or whatever is fine. Or maybe you've got a priority to deal with IoT and you want to sort of approach this model for your IoT devices. This is you don't have to go all in from day one, but understanding what the framework looks like and then creating a sort of a roadmap to get there, I do think is very important. So on that connectivity layer, as you can see, we've got all of the usual suspects in terms of wired, wireless, SD branch and SD-WAN. IoT has different kinds of connectivity protocols, as I've just showed you guys with with BLE and Zigbee, and of course 5G, which is probably has the largest marketing budget of any technology these days. You can't sort of turn a TV on or browse a website or whatever without people talking about 5G. And again, that's a topic that for an entire seminar talking about 5G and Wi-Fi 6 and the sort of the overlap there and the benefits of those technologies. And I'm happy to sort of take questions on that as well moving forward. But again, the idea is that we've got that connectivity layer. Now, once people have connected, be it via wireless, via wired, or potentially a private LTE connection, then we want to protect that connection. So we want to make sure we understand what device is connecting, who's behind that device, or if it's a machine, what credential does it potentially have. The continuous monitoring of those devices, right, from a posture perspective, being able to detect threats that are potentially coming in, whether it's an insider threat or whether it's somebody coming in from the outside. And then that top layer, and that really talks to zero trust security, and I believe one of my colleagues, Jason Atkins, talked to you guys about that in the previous seminar, some of you which attended. So that's that whole zero trust security layer. And then on top of that, we have our sort of AI ops layer, which is effectively taking all of this data that we can get from the infrastructure and as part of the zero trust model, not just from Aruba, but also from some of our third-party ecosystem partners, right? Whether it's your Palo Alto firewalls or whether it's Microsoft Intune for EMM or whatever, that is able to give us updated information saying, hey, this device is now out of compliance, or this this security event happened, or whatever it might be.
We've just sorry, Carlos, there. I'm doing my best to try to summarize a few questions that have just come flying in. And some of them are a tad technical in nature. So if I get a little bit deep or misrepresent the question, please do set me on track. But one we've heard here is around the Aruba Edge devices. Do you expect to see that in the future they'll come with native 4 and 5G support as well?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, our branch gateways today include a built-in LTE radio and SIM card slot that you can stick your own SIM card in there. Our access points and gateways today, you can already plug a USB sort of dongle onto the back of it to get that backhaul, which a lot of customers use as a secondary, to be honest. And as I said, some of our gateways, some of our SD branch gateways already have that LTE capability built in. In terms of, having an access point that has got, built-in radios for private LTE as well as for, Wi-Fi, that's a pretty tough engineering challenge. It's a different thing to have a radio for backhaul, a cellular radio for backhaul, than it is to have a cellular radio for sort of indoor coverage, like a DAS style system that people may be familiar with.
I'm pleased you've mentioned private LTE, because I'm really unsure how to frame this question. I think it's an implied a question here. The implication is that, so does that mean with the private LTE that in future the edge devices will be able to support multiple WAN, i.e., fiber, NBN, 5G with 5G based policy routing?
Sorry, when you say end devices, what are you talking about with an end device? Do you mean like a mobile phone or
edge device? So a branch gateway, for example. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I missed that edge part. So yeah, look, there is work that's going on about how to provide a closer intersection or provide more of those capabilities natively. Again, we could probably have an entire session on Wi-Fi 6 and 5G, because it's a lot to unpack in a few minutes. But I guess let me put it this way: Wi-Fi 6 is a first-class tenet of a 5G architecture, right? So a 5G architecture has independent capabilities in terms of the radio and transport technology and the core. And, we are certainly working on, solutions, with ourselves and with some of our partners that will enable, a single device, if you like, to have multiple connectivity options from a backhaul perspective. And our SD branch gateways, for example, today, they already do, policy-based routing out of different paths, look at latency in terms of going out one interface versus another interface. So, I can't commit that one box will have every single connector for every single type of, connectivity in the future. But certainly LTE and 5G are very interesting and things that we've already been working on.
Yeah, wow, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problems. All right, so yeah, I think I was sort of finishing up just in terms of that AI ops layer and, leveraging all of that great data that we have so that we can provide, more insights into what's going on. Obviously, the management side of things, in terms of managing the network and leveraging, AI to give you insights about particular problems that are happening or that may be happening. And and everything else that goes in between. So I mentioned that there were 3 steps, and I'm going to go through quickly because we're getting lots of questions, which is great. I want to make sure I also get through these slides. So we talked about connect, right? So being able to have a unified sort of platform to look at your SD WAN and branch, look at your switching, look at your IoT connectivity, and obviously looking at your Wi-Fi, whether that's in the home, whether that's in the office, whether that's in a, sort of third party, shared location, whether you've got one big campus or whether you've got, distributed sort of branches or schools or clinics or whatever that may be. And, being able to essentially from one place be able to control and manage all of that, infrastructure, and leverage all of the work that Aruba's done in order to, get these different technologies, under one banner, which is Aruba Central. Step 2 is protect. And again, I know Jason did a big seminar with you guys on zero trust security, so I don't want to touch too much on that. I just want to give a different sort of perspective though, in terms of, zero trust networking. Now, we all don't have the resources of a Google to, deploy a Google Beyond Corp completely, autonomous, remotely accessible, takes inputs from, all of these different systems. But we are able to provide a zero trust framework. And what I wanted to sort of put out there is, hopefully everybody's familiar with the AAA model that we have known and loved for many years and that we all still use on a daily basis, whether we know it or not, right? So, your connection to your ISP is leveraging the AAA framework. When people are connecting to your secure wireless SSIDs, they're leveraging that AAA framework. But one of the things that we think is that third A, that accounting, which is traditionally being used for monitoring and billing of, how long you were connected for and how much access you had and everything like that. We actually want to sort of, update that to having that third A be access control. And, the access control side of it, the reason we've sort of differentiated that a little bit is that one of the things that we're finding is that there are a lot of devices that, and especially in the IoT world, right, predominantly in the IoT world, that are maybe the first time they connect to your network, they already have a vulnerability. They already have a known vulnerability because, some of these IoT widgets were potentially sitting in a warehouse or on a retail shelf at Officeworks or whatever it might be, before they, for months. Right. And so, you may be plugging in an IoT device that already has a known vulnerability that can be exploited. It's the same concept. If you take a Windows XP computer and plug it into an open internet connection, it'll take all of about 1 minute for it to get completely owned because of the known vulnerabilities. And what we want to avoid is a similar sort of issue happening with IoT devices. So, if I break down that authentication, authorization, and access control, my first tip for everybody is prevent invisible network connections. Do not let devices just connect because there's a free port or because somebody happens to know the PSK for an SSID you're using or whatever it might be. Always aspire for the best authentication possible. Make sure you've got visibility of what's going on, leverage of what devices are connecting, leverage multi-factor authentications, and, if possible, leverage certificates, via ETLS. And, again, there's lots to sort of unpack there, but the key takeaway from an authentication perspective is really around preventing those invisible network connections. Now, once a device is connected to the network, then you want to be able to actually, provide this authorization and access control level where, based on the identity of the device, based on information that we're getting, again, from some of our third-party ecosystem partners, around the posture of that device, or from additional, IDS, IPS capabilities that are inside our gateways and the like, and put each of those users or devices effectively into roles, right? We don't need a VLAN for every type of device. You can't VLAN and ACL your way out of IoT. And so being able to create these roles, like these simple examples on the left-hand side there, that are connecting, through a switch or an access point, which, again, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be on campus or in school. That access point may be in somebody's home, right? Because that's where their new office is. And it's able to create a secure tunnel over the internet in an SD-WAN style approach, connect to one of our physical or virtual gateways that's sitting, in the cloud or in one of your data centers or in your office, and, provide that access to the various different applications and block access to those different applications. But again, not doing things on a sort of a per VLAN, per ACL basis, but really doing this on a, application category perspective. It's the same concept of, how we moved from old firewalls that used to use ports and protocols, and we've moved to next generation firewalls that talk about users and groups and applications. So, we've been doing that in the wireless domain for many, many, many years. And again, that's the framework for that authorization and access control, which is this, this not only putting you in the right role in the first place, but continuously monitoring and getting updates, leveraging all of that data and analytics that we have, for certain behavioral use cases or certain, malware events or whatever it might be, to effectively make sure that, people are getting access to the applications that they need. And finally, with regards to that third step is that, that component of analyzing and acting. Now, AI and ML are big buzzwords that everybody, including Aruba, is very guilty of overusing. But one of the things I guess that I wanted to talk to you about is the importance of having, big data and ML and AI rely on actually not just sort of saying that you've got that on your web page or in your marketing briefs, but it's all about the data, right? And that domain expertise. So we at Aruba, we've been building wireless networks for 18 years. And with the on the switching side of it, as you guys know, HP acquired Aruba. They've been building switching for 30 odd years. And so when you combine that, all of that domain expertise, all of the attack cases that we've been through over the years, all of the scale of our customers across all of these different verticals, then you end up with a lot more granular insights that you're able to provide to customers. So today we've got about 80 odd insights that are able to bubble up. And the reason that this is important is so that you're not essentially getting generic false positive insights, right? An insight that says, "Oh, reboot your access point," is not particularly helpful, right? It's sort of like using a hammer where you need a surgical instrument. So again, just as you guys are looking at Aruba solutions and other third-party solutions, and undoubtedly they will talk to you about AI and ML, just take a bit of a step back and think, well, hold on, do these people have enough history and data and domain expertise to really give me something that's going to be granular and precise versus something that's sort of generic and blunt. Just a basic example of that, of how that works, what we call AI assist, where, for example, the system will detect that there's a particular issue, and as technologists, our favorite user support issue is the one where the user says it just happens randomly, right? That's the most frustrating thing to try and troubleshoot. So given that Aruba Central is sort of constantly monitoring this stuff, you don't have to worry about being there when the issue happens or trying to replicate it, because the system itself is able to capture that kind of information. In this case, there's an IPsec issue with one of the WAN connections, and the system is able to automatically send a ticket to Aruba TAC about the issue. Aruba TAC's able to respond sort of in line, so you don't have to go through your email or whatever it is. You can look at it directly in the system, and hey presto, the issue can be resolved. And importantly, we then take those insights and sort of feed them back into our models in the back end, so that other customers can benefit from it, right? So if we, and this is, we've been doing this for some time now, where we notice particular issues that are consistent across lecture theatres in universities, for example, or across a ward in a hospital, or buildings with certain types of characteristics. And so again, that continuous cycle of feeding back into the system is something that benefits all of our customers ultimately. You may not have had that issue today, but who's to say that you might not have that tomorrow? And if the system is able to say, hey, we detected this and this is the fix, and in some cases, and we've applied it for you, right? I think it's probably fair to say that our customers at this stage are not quite ready for that full closed loop where we detect the issue, we log it, and then we apply the fix. Customers at this stage are still, hey, I really want you to tell me the problem, show me the problem, show me the resolution. But ultimately, I still want to be the person that clicks the button and says, okay, apply or fix. And look, over time, as people get more comfortable and confident in the solution, we expect that to sort of change. It's almost like automatic updates on your on your PC or on your Mac or whatever that might be, or on your iPhone. I eventually gave up, and it's like, okay, just automatically update my things for me, because I've got too many applications installed to sort of worry about looking at things. So that's a bit of a as I said, a step 1, 2, 3 of how to move from where you may be today towards that kind of cloud native architecture with those three tiers.
When Carlos, I've been sitting on some questions
Sure.
for a while, and I think it may be appropriate as a bit of a segue to ask this one, and I'm unsure what you are or are not able to share, so feel free to just let us know where the line is. But you've mentioned around data and domain expertise and years of experience and curating the data, but you've also spoken about ports and protocols, application centric, etc., and your ecosystem. How much does it matter, or how much does it come into play around your ecosystem of other trusted partners? So I know you've got an open architecture and openly promote that. Can you share a little bit about how that supports customers and what that means?
Absolutely. Look, Aruba's been around for a long time. HPE's been around for an even longer time, and we have very comprehensive portfolios. But we cannot do it all alone. Any one company that tells you that they can do everything is flat out lying to you. So we want to work with our partners that have built these, very, very compelling solutions across, a variety of different, different sort of domains, whether it's in security, whether it's in, analytics and engagement, all of, or 101 other different sort of categories. IT is not just one small, little bucket. And so, we have always been a open standards focused company, right? With leveraging open protocols and sort of open API interfaces, along with, open standards. And, where Aruba is very active in the standards committee as well. But so we have very deliberately built in integrations with third parties, and in some cases they've built it with us, to be able to deliver on a much richer set of solutions. Now, the challenge becomes in the integration, right? And so it's all well and good to have this ecosystem of partners. The challenge for us is, how do we make sure that even though, let's say that we've got Aruba ClearPass and we have a Palo Alto firewall, right? The important thing, I believe, for our customers is not just to say, oh, hey, ClearPass, or Aruba and Palo Alto are friends, and here's this marketing, marketing note that talks all about it. What our customers want to know is like, okay, that's great, because I love Aruba and I love Palo Alto, but I don't want to be your QA environment for this, right? I don't want to just like, here's two products, go and make them work together. So, the challenge for us and for our ecosystem is, when we're putting something out there, to make sure that it's already been sort of tried and tested and well documented and QA'd, so that, from a customer perspective, if they can follow a sort of small tech node or click a button or whatever, depending on what the integration is, that they have confidence that it's actually going to be working. And more importantly, they have confidence that, if an issue arises, there's not going to be finger pointing, right? It's like, no, it's your fault. No, it's their fault. No, it's your fault. And, at Aruba, we pride ourselves on, making sure that if a customer has a problem and it's between an Aruba product and some sort of a third party, we will take ownership of that. We will interact with that third party. We will try and come to a resolution. We will not say, well, replace everything with Cisco and then it will work, which is what we often hear when customers call Cisco TAC about a variety of different things. The ecosystem is fundamental to an overall network and security framework, in my opinion. And again, that sort of connect, protect, analyze that I mentioned to you, you can still deploy that model if you happen to have a different vendor's switches at the moment, for example, or maybe you've got one of your locations that has, different Wi-Fi, or, again, we're not sort of saying, well, I've mentioned Palo Alto a couple of times. We have integration with, 6 or 7 other next generation firewall vendors out there because they're good and customers want them. So it's not necessarily restricted to just one particular vendor in each case. We try and partner with best of breed. And to be honest, it's largely informed by our customers, because our customers are the ones that say, hey, we really like, product X, and we want to use it in this particular way with the Aruba, ecosystem, with the Aruba product set, sorry. How do we make these things work together? And, that's how a lot of our integrations, come to life.
Yeah, so you may have potentially tickled a few feathers there. We've had a handful of questions coming through, and I think you've semi-answered a few already. So I think, summarizing, I think what you've said there, and if I'm interpreting correctly, don't just look for a tick box on a data sheet. Look for a proven integration guide. Look for a reference architecture. Look for a solution blueprint you can follow.
Look for a reference site, right? Ask me, say, where, is there another place is there another school that's doing this, or is there another hospital that's doing this? Now, the one thing that I would request on that front is we appreciate that our customers ask us for reference, reference sites of a particular integration or whatever that might be. And we understand why that's important to customers. So my ask for those of you out there that are already Aruba customers is to return the favor in some senses, and if you're happy with what we're doing, and your network doing well, please consider doing a case study with us, or being a email reference, or a name drop reference, or a variety of different things, because in the same way that you guys want comfort that you're not the first doing this, or that this is a validated solution, so do other customers, and they it might be you that is able to provide that peace of mind and that reference.
And if, for example, if you're an organization who's there's a lot of depth there in the portfolio, so if you're an organization who's only just starting out with Aruba Central, do you have any recommendations on what would be the quickest path to achieve tangible benefits from the platform?
Yeah, I would say use all of our features. And what I mean by that is that, look, it's not to be snarky. We have a lot of customers that sometimes will deploy an Aruba solution, and they'll only turn on like 5% of the features. And you've already paid for it, you've already bought it, and so you should really look at leveraging all of the capabilities that we have in there. So if you're just starting out with Aruba Central, welcome to the party. We're glad you're here, and take time to speak to the partner, speak to Aruba, go on our community, Airheads community website, and look at, okay, well, hey, I know I've got this capability. Let me try out some of this new AI insight stuff, or let me look at, how do I lock down my roles a little bit more, so it's not just if you authenticate, you get blanket internet access. So I think it's really understanding all of the capabilities that you've already paid for, and start turning some of those on where relevant, obviously, right? You're not going to turn something on if you've got no meaning.
I can see one here where it's I've got, so I've manually added my assets, but now I know I've got a thing called ZTP. What do I do? All right. So zero touch provisioning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's multiple ways to leverage the capabilities that we have it. And so look, maybe you've done things manually in the past, and say, okay, well, hey, this new branch that I've got to open up, or this, this floor that I'm refreshing or whatever, let's try that out with the ZTP approach, because if we're able to, have confidence that that works, then we can effectively just ship an access point out to the branch location and have the non-technical IT person, replace the old one and plug it in, and it'll sort of automatically configure itself. So, don't be afraid to test and to try things, and certainly reach out to us for support and guidance on that.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Is there anything else specifically when you go looking, and I've just backtracked and noticed a question there on the third-party vendor integrations, outside of customer feedback generating the integration, is there anything in particular, you may or may not look for when you're looking to integrate in the ecosystem with particular other third-party vendors?
Look, I mean, we read the same tech press as you guys do. We follow the analysts as well, and we know who, what companies are hot, what companies are not. Being based in Silicon Valley obviously gives us, and having been there for 18 years, gives us a lot of access to startup companies and new innovations and the like. But I think, to be completely honest, probably the most important thing from my perspective in terms of having an integration is that it's actually approved by both parties, because it's quite easy to sort of reverse engineer and hack together an integration. But what happens when something goes wrong and you ring up TAC and saying, hey, I've integrated, I've got ClearPass and it's integrated with, product XYZ and I'm having this problem. Like, okay, well, we've never seen that company. We've never heard of that company. We don't, we haven't done any testing. We don't know this. So, having it's a real partnership from that integration perspective. Now, that means that it's a bit more laborious and there's more work to do and there's more to keep up, but you've got to have both companies on board in order for it to be really effective for our customers. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't hack something together on your own, because we do use open standards and open protocols and the like, but certainly we like to be able to validate things from a QA perspective, again, so that, so that the customer isn't doing QA on behalf of the vendor, which, look, we've got some customers that are very forward thinking and they're always trying to use our products in new, weird and wonderful ways. And that's great. I'm not trying to discourage that whatsoever. But when we look at a partnership with a third party from an integration perspective, we want to make sure that we're doing it in partnership and we're not just doing it on our own. Yeah,
couldn't agree more. Thank you. I must apologise, Carlos. I've just had a look at the time as we're talking, and we've got like 6 or 7 minutes to go, and I'm unsure, even with Q&A at the end through the questions that I've had, I'll be able to get them answered. So what I'll empower you to do, if you don't mind, Carlos, is do your best to steamroll through anything of importance that you want to share today.
Yep.
And if there's outstanding questions I've seen, I promise to you out there, I'll get back to you, or Carlos will personally around getting the questions answered. But without that, I'll let you just steamroll through.
Yeah, look, that's fine. Look, just to, I guess, put it all together, that edge services and software-defined networking, is really, from my perspective, around being able to grab that data, that telemetry, and be constantly providing insights into the to the admin or to the operators, whether those insights are around performance, around security, around enhancements, things that are going wrong. That really is the key to being able to get better automation. And to be able to, again, let the system work for you rather than you work for the system. I think so. And you guys will get a copy of these slides and the like. So, just to summarize, and so we've got time for a couple more questions. We really think that, customers should think about where they are on this journey to, having a sort of a cloud native architecture that is, sort of data driven, from an AI perspective, and is able to augment your staff and let it do the busy work so that you can concentrate on some of the more more pressing sort of business enablement and let's do new things rather than fix old things. And for those of you who attended our Atmosphere Digital this year, or we hope you enjoyed it. For those of you that don't know what that is, the website down the bottom there, Aruba ATM Digital, is essentially our platform for doing events. We used to obviously do a lot of face-to-face things, but given where the world is today, we've sort of moved it online. But what we wanted to do is, rather than just say, hey, we're having an Aruba conference and it's on these dates for 2 days, attend, and then away you go, we've sort of built a platform that is living and breathing, and is our a sort of one-stop shop to go and get access to keynote presentations, to technical sessions, to content specific about each of those three layers that I talked about, and as well a bit of fun and games in there that you guys find. So you can register at that address anytime, and you can pull down, you can watch events on demand, or you can tune into live broadcasts that we sort of do on a on a monthly basis or something like that. We just had my boss Partha, the CTO, do a session just last Thursday around hybrid workplace and some of this contact tracing stuff if you're actually interested. So with that, thank you for your attention and your questions. I couldn't see all of them in the chat because I'm in full screen mode, but it sounds like there was plenty, and I'm happy to take some more before we wrap up.
Great, thank you very much. I'm quickly scrolling through there, Carlos, trying to capture them. I've done my best to summarize a few. Just a couple here I've noticed. Earlier on, you mentioned things like, no need for VLANs. The best place to protect is when they're trying to connect to your network. I know a lot of customers are doing a great job now of segmenting devices when they get on the network, but I'm not sure how many are actually able or understand or have been able to embrace the concept of no VLANs.
So let me just clarify there. I guess I don't mean zero VLANs. What it means is you don't need one VLAN per application or one VLAN per type of user. You can certainly, you still may need a few different VLANs for a variety of different reasons, but the tradition of having a single VLAN, creating a new VLAN for every single type of new application or service that you're trying to do, and then extend that across layer 2 if you've got multiple campuses or multiple branches or whatever. So I think it's about minimizing your dependency on VLANs and ACLs to do things. And leverage sort of smarter, technologies and capabilities versus, an outright revolution of just having a completely flat network for 10,000 students on your campus or something.
Right. So if I'm interpreting that, the message there is let the tools do the job for you. Simple, reliable, automated. Yeah.
Yes.
To a certain degree. Okay. Look, we're right on time. I think I'll wrap it up there, because if I ask another one of the questions, we're going to go way over. But what I will promise to do for the questions I've missed, I'll make sure I get some answers and send them out to you. And with that, today, for all attending, thank you very much. I understand in the situation we're in right now, you're probably getting very busy with virtual meetings and virtual seminars, but I trust that today's session, and thank you very much, Carlos, for your insights, was extremely valuable. I know it captivated me, even though I was there with you for this webinar. So thank you, and I greatly appreciate it.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And with that, everyone, we'll just close out.